This village disappeared without a trace. The mystery of Angikuni Lake. A whole village disappeared without a trace and was never found. Over 30 individuals seemingly disappeared, leaving their food hanging, pots on fire, and pets that had served them well. The scene looks as if they left to casually attend to something and return to what they were doing, but they never returned. Where did they go? Did someone come for them? Were they captured by aliens? Or did they just disappear and reappear in a different dimension or part of the world? Hello there, and welcome to Mysteries and Facts, where we discuss some of the weirdest, most mysterious, and scariest stories about real-world locations around the world. If you're new and here to hear weird and mysterious stories from around the globe, kindly click the subscribe button right now and hit the notification bell. You won't regret it. Today, we would be talking about the village that disappeared near Anjikuni Lake in Canada as far back as the 1930s. The world as we know it is full of mysterious and unexplainables. This extends to locations, items, and people who are strange and mysterious. Some of these places flat out look strange or are merely mysteries because of the stories that precede them. Lake Anjikuni is one such place. At first glance, Lake Anjikuni looks like your next tourist destination, due to the serenity of the location and the amazing view it offers to all who visit it. The lake itself is fine and can be found in the Kivalliq Region, Nunavut, Canada. It is one of several lakes along the Kazan River. Unlike the other lakes along the river, however, this one is popular for the wrong, mysterious, and scariest of reasons. The people of an Inuit settlement which lived near the lake, with a population of 30 or more, just disappeared one day without a trace. To understand what I'm talking about, let's travel back in time, close to a century ago. In November 1930, a trapper named Joe LaBelle was looking for a place for shelter after having been out too long in the wild. A fur trapper refers to a person that hunts animals for their fur, obviously. He had been hunting in the location for a while and was therefore familiar with the terrain. His familiarity with the terrain would, however, not protect him from the frozen flat landscape that was blasted all over with wind and ice crystals. In his earlier expeditions, he had come across an Eskimo village, or Inuit settlement, and interacted with the natives that were there. I'm tempted to say he knew them quite well, especially if they easily welcomed him into their midst like one of them, and he thought they were safe enough to go to in the middle of the night when he was lost. Now tell me, which one of you will go to a village late at night where you're not known and likely to be killed? Just like I thought, nobody. Which is why I'm led to believe that he was friends and had coordinal relationships with the folks in the village. He knew the village to be a place that was typically so full of life, with the natives taking care of each other, preparing their food and medicine, and taking care of their pets, with their children playing like no one's business. After walking for a while, he found himself looking at the village from a distance. As he got closer, he started making greeting calls that came with no response. Although he knew where he was, or at least had an idea of where he was supposed to be, he wondered if he was actually in the right place, as he did not feel the liveliness and colorfulness he typically felt when he entered the village. They'd also usually respond to his greeting calls. Instead, he was met with an eerie silence that was deafening. Granted, it was night, but still, the village looked like a shadow of itself. He still drew nigh, thinking that perhaps there was a festival or celebration going on he did not know about, that would inspire the silence or possibly the absence of the people. He would, however, soon find out that was far from the case. He saw things he did not have explanations for. The place looked abandoned and deserted, and not in the way that you could say they just packed up and left their village. At least then he could have told himself that they might have perhaps gone on some pilgrimage or journey. Instead, the site looked like the people had simply disappeared while going about their daily business. Confused? Allow me to clarify. He found meals that had been started and left abandoned. Who starts cooking and then leaves it on a fire? If it was just one meal belonging to one hut, he could have found a plausible explanation for it. Instead, it was like that throughout the entire village. He did not quite understand why they would start their meals and leave it unless something had actually happened to them, especially given how the nomads treated life and their meals with respect. Although he was very sure that there was no one around, he still entered their huts to see if he perhaps could find someone that had been left behind, 6 in total. When he had entered, he found something that had compounded the puzzling situation he had already come to find. The huts were filled with food. Not prepared meals, but food that is being kept in storage. Aside from that, their personal belongings were all intact. In some places, he saw the discarded repair of junior seal skin that had been left before it had been completed. He also found an old rifle as well as the weapons of the settlers. It didn't make sense for the people to leave their settlement without it. Stepping out of the huts and looking around, he came across a burial grave that had been opened and emptied. One could say wild animals could have been responsible, but looking at it, it could not have been the work of animals. 300 feet from the village, he found 7 bodies, not of men, but of sled dogs belonging to the Inuit, which had starved to death. You might find this weird given the fact that I had earlier stated that there was food storage in the village as well as unfinished meals. How then could the dogs have starved to death given they were so close to the village? Despite all that, he was seeing there was no sign that there had been a fight in the settlement, or that they had been invaded by outsiders. Label wondered this as well. He stood on the shore of the Angikuni lake and wondered what had happened. Even at the shore, he could see their boats still present. After a while, he could still not find any plausible explanation for it. He then decided it was time to bring the authorities into this. Perhaps they might have more luck in locating them or have a more plausible explanation for their disappearance. He then moved to the Mounties, officially known as the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, to lodge a complaint. They went to the location and found it just as labeled and described. Albeit, they found more open graves that had been dug out, which was an extremely difficult task given the terrain. They determined the Inuit had been missing for at least 8 weeks given the state in which they found their settlement. If you haven't clicked the like or subscribe button already, this might be a good time to do so. An official inquiry was launched which took the testimony of other fur trappers. This was in the person of Armand Laurent and his 2 sons. They had not been at the location around the time LaBelle was there, but reckoned they had seen strange things in that area some weeks earlier. This is where it starts to get weird. They stated they observed something big and cylindrically shaped morph into a bullet shape before moving towards the lake. Laurent also mentioned he had seen a weird shining object in the sky a few days prior. Not being able to really put a finger on what might have happened to the Inuits, the RCMP or Mounties classified it as seasonal or permanent desertion given the nomadic lifestyles of the Inuits. They acknowledged the situation was odd, but could not come to a more logical decision otherwise. With time, it became a permanent desertion since they never truly came back. All who heard the story wondered about it. Some believed it was aliens. Others believed it was some deity that had come for them, whilst others stated that the story could not possibly be true. With time, it became hearsay with everyone telling their own version of it. The story became folklore among the people in the region and became increasingly popular when it was officially published by Frank Edwards in his book, Stranger Than Science, in 1959. It has since been retold so many times that it's natural and possible for some of the details to have been changed or lost over time. Despite all this, one thing is for sure. Many truly believe in the story and have retold it to their children and families, and some have even published it in blogs and news publications. Are the facts factual though? There are many who doubt it. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police disregards the story and states that they have no such incident in their official records. They consider it an urban legend that was made popular by Frank Edwards' book. Is it though? Historically, records show that LaBelle was a real person and lived around the time the story is said to have occurred, which increases the chance of it being true. But that does not necessarily mean that it is, as there are other factors that increase the probability of it being a lie. For instance, the story is said to have occurred in November when the lake would have been frozen. The place would have been very cold for anyone to also live there, especially a group of 30 settlers. He also mentions that he saw sealskin in their settlement. This is thought to be impossible since no trace of willows or seals has ever been found in the location. Some might ask, what if they brought it there themselves, given the fact that they are nomads? There are many who refuse to believe that this never happened for a number of reasons. Why are there so many versions of it if it's not true? Why does every Canadian that lives around the place or someone whose grandparents were alive in that time period believe it's true? Many are convinced that there can be no smoke without fire, meaning some portion of it is most probably and most possibly true. Due to this, it has been published over and over on various digital platforms, and was published a lot more in the 50s and 60s. There are some who still visit the lake looking for evidence of the settlers. Up until today, however, no evidence has ever been found that there was once settlers there. What do you think though? Do you believe it's true? Do you think the government is covering it up because of the alien saga or the fact that a whole settlement disappeared without a trace? Or do you think it's just an urban legend? Let us know in the comments section. Also, if you'd never heard of this before, now that you know this about the Angikuni Lake, would you still visit the place? Are there other places you'd like us to talk about? Kindly mention it in the comments section. And if you liked today's video and want more, like the video and hit the subscribe button. The next video will be sure to blow you away.